Let's start with your resume was a little light getting into, you were taking acting classes, but you hadn't done a lot of professional or at least television acting. And then you're a bail bondsman and you land this audition. How did, it's a great story. How did it happen?
Well, I was in an acting class and my teacher was threatening to kick me out of class in a certain amount of weeks if I didn't get, a professional job because I hadn't worked. I mean, I did tons of theater. I was always doing theater, whether I wrote the play myself or produced it, whatever, so we were always doing theater, me and my friends, but getting work on film and TV it was just something that eluded me. And so in this particular instance, I would just put out an all out kind of attempt to get a job. And in that, my classmates forced me to ask Jeffrey Tambor, who was in the master's class and a frequent substitute teacher in our advanced class, to do me some kind of a favor. So I asked him if he could set up a meeting with me and the guy that cast the Larry Sanders Show. And he did. And the way the bail bond thing came into it was I was really nervous about the meeting because a general meeting between an actor and a casting director, especially someone who's, big time casting director, is sort of a lose-lose situation because you wouldn't be having a general interview if you were working. And, the only thing that would impress him is that you're working, or maybe you're on Broadway or something. But
So this is like a charity meet. This is a favor
yeah,
to Jeffrey.
exactly.
All right, I'll meet this guy.
And the first thing they're always going to say to you is, "What are you up to?" And they've heard 5'9" probably a lot of times. So, there's not much you can say, but a friend of mine reminded me to lead with the bail bondsman thing. And it worked. It worked like a charm. He was like eating out of my hand for an hour, asking me what the bail bond industry is like and what do you do and is it dangerous and have you, ever like had to do anything dangerous? And
Did you? Before we get to the rest of the story.
the most dangerous thing I ever had to do was go to Pomona Court and surrender a guy whose family didn't want to be responsible for the bond anymore because he was a flight risk. So, he doesn't know it. He comes to court on bail, and I step up before the judge, give him my name, and say, I'm here to surrender the defendant. And the bailiff goes over and cuffs the guy and takes him away, and he's looking at me going, Larry Thomas, huh? Remember, I never really went out and did any skip tracing or what they call bounty hunting. But anyway, the meeting went so well for me because I never had to talk about my lack of, work on film and television. And then as I was leaving, the guy, Mark Hirschfeld, he said, oh, by the way, it shows on your resume here that you do a lot of dialects. And I said, yeah, with a mug like this, you have to be able to do like every dialect in the world. And he said, well, that's good because I also cast Seinfeld and we often need, foreign New York street types. Anyway, so this agent calls me because he gets a call from Mark Hirschfeld's office requesting that I come in to read for Seinfeld. And it was like, his voice was like he just saw like, Casper the Ghost or something. Larry, this is Mike, your agent. And I'm going like, yeah, Mike, I know who you are. And he's going, well, I got a call from Mark Hirschfeld's office and they want to see you on an episode of Seinfeld, and I'm going like, oh yeah, great. And he goes, I didn't submit you for it. And I'm going like, yeah, Mike, you probably shouldn't tell me that, I might actually think you're working for me. And so, he goes, well, all I know is the character is called the Soup Nazi and there's nothing on paper for you, but they want you to come in with a Middle Eastern accent. And it's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And, he gave me the address. And so I went home and it was about 7:30 p.m. And so I'm kind of working on the idea of who the Soup Nazi would be on an episode of Seinfeld. And remember, this is season 7, and I'm very familiar with the show now. And so I had this image of a guy. It kind of came in pieces, but I'll just put it all together. I had this image of a guy pushing a cart down the streets of New York with soup in it. And he's like in an army uniform. And he's just some like really crazy militant guy that was in the army or whatever. And then for the Middle Eastern accent, I had Lawrence of Arabia on videotape. So I put that in. And there was just this great part where Omar Sharif says to Peter O'Toole, "You're drifting, Lawrence. Stop drifting. Be warned." And I thought, okay, that's the voice. Then a friend of mine who's a stand-up comedian, I called him because he was kind of helping me in my job search. He's the one that sort of got me the audition for the Power Rangers, which was the day before, believe it or not. So he says, "Well, what's the character?" And I told him, and I said, "But there's no sides available, so I'm not sure if they're going to have sides for me tomorrow, if I'm going to improvise or whatever." And he goes, "Well, improvise something for me right now." And I went, okay. He'd probably say something like, "You, small fry. You, yes, the bald one. I don't like your looks. Go to the end of my line or you get no soup." And my friend goes, he started laughing. And he's a stand-up comedian and an actor. And he goes, "I really like that no soup thing." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I don't know. It just has a funny ring to it. No soup." And I went, "Really? I don't get it, but okay." And so I went in the next morning and, I got dressed up in this army. I was going to wear, my wife at the time, who was an actress, was waiting tables, and I was going to wear like jeans and a white t-shirt and one of her aprons from work. And then I thought, like everybody's going to wear that. So I need something original. So I put on an army shirt and I had a pair of khaki green pants, and we're looking in the mirror, and I hadn't shaved in a few days, and I had the mustache. And she just goes, "Wait a second." And she goes to her closet and brings out a beret and puts it on my head. And we're both staring in the mirror going like, "Oh my God, it's Saddam Hussein." And I said, "Do I really have the guts to like go in there?" I mean, I haven't had a professional, big time audition. And I'm thinking, should I, is this stupid or what, So I went in like that. And there were 3 scenes. So I took them outside to read them out loud. Because you don't want to go into the room, and hear yourself out loud for the first time in front of a casting person. And so I went out in back of the alley and I read it out loud. And sure enough, within the first scene was "No soup for you." And I thought, oh, that's a coincidence, And so I went in, and it was the casting associate. And he just basically said, "Yeah, let's do it. I hear you do dialects, let's just do it." And I read the first few scenes, and he kind of laughed in all the right places. So I felt good about it. And then, strangely, about 3 weeks went by. And so
First, real quick, did you was it the same intonation that you ended up bringing to the character? Was it "No soup for you"?
Yeah. I mean, I read it, those 3 scenes, exactly how it ended up on the television show. It was the easiest job I've ever done because I never had to change anything from my very first initial instinct was the way it ended up finally being. 3 weeks go by and I figure, well, I don't know much about television, but I'm pretty sure I didn't get it. I think I sent a note to Jeffrey Tambor saying, "Thanks. It resulted in an audition for Seinfeld, but I didn't get it." And then I think I skipped class that night because I was going to one of those casting director workshops for I wanted the casting director. While I was going out on my job searches, I was going to 5 casting offices a day, dropping off my picture. And one day I went to Victoria Burrows' office, and at the time she was casting Walker, Texas Ranger. And she was really nice. She sat me down. She told me what I was doing wrong and all this stuff. And she goes, "And by the way, if you want to get a reading for the show, come to my casting workshop tonight. You know, so I joined one of those casting workshop places. I auditioned, I got in, took her class for like $30. And she walks into the class, she sees me there and she goes, "Oh my God, do you mind if I tell your story to the class?" And I said, "No." And she told the whole story, how I wandered into her office, you know, hat in hand, basically, and handed her a picture and resume. And she said, "So you've got your reading for Walker, Texas Ranger. I'll read you in front of the class." And meanwhile, in our acting class, which I skipped, Jeffrey is going, "Where's Larry Thomas? I've got some information for him." And so somebody leaves me a message on the phone. "Jeffrey was looking for you. He had something to tell you in class tonight." So I get the message, but at the same time, I get another call from Mike, the warehouse agent, going, "Larry, it's Mike, your agent. And didn't you read for Seinfeld like a couple of weeks ago?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, they want to see you again. This time, you know, at the producer's office. I guess you got a call back, you know, it's a producer session." And I'm going, "Oh, great, great. I thought I lost that one," you know. Literally said to him, "Mike, could you stop ending every sentence with a question mark, because you're beginning to hurt my feelings." So it's like the next day, right? I go in, you know, I don my Army uniform again, and I go in, and I didn't know that at this time, I think you can now, but at this time there was no drive-ons for CBS Radford. So I drove up and they told me you have to find street parking and then walk back. So by the time I finally got there to Producers Building 5 and upstairs and whatever, I was about 5 minutes late. And so I walk in and I see a couple other guys, John Paragon, who I recognized, you know, as John B from Pee-wee's Playhouse, and a great comedy special that John did with Paul Rubens, just the two of them, doing all kinds of great skits. They did like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and you know, he did like Richard Burton going like, "You talk to me about the Oscars," you know. And I was a big fan of that special. Someone taped it, so we watched it over and over. But so I recognized John, and then he's with this guy, Yul Vasquez, who I didn't know, but ended up playing the great armoire thief with the gay Cuban accent, which was his idea, by the way. They were supposed to be gay, but you know, he threw in the Cuban accent. And then I see Richard Libertini, who, if you don't know who he's gone now, unfortunately, but he was very well known for, he was the Indian guru in All of Me with Lily Tomlin and Steve Martin chasing them around going, "Edwina Buckingham, put Edwina Buckingham." And he was the South American military general in The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know,
Pizzy Flop.
You kiss Pepe? Pepe, you kiss this handsome man? That was Richard Libertini. So I took one look at him and I thought, what am I doing here?
Right.
You know, I'm not going to get this.
Right.
He's going to get this. And so Mark, the casting director, who I hadn't seen since that general audition, because you know, the first time I auditioned, it was for his associate Brian Myers, who ended up being the casting director on Just Shoot Me years later. Anyway, so Mark comes out and he goes, "Oh, good, Larry, you're here." And I hadn't even signed in yet. He goes, "Come on in, we're waiting for you." And so I come in and there's this long room with tons of people like on these two couches, who I would later learn to know who all of them were, but at this point I didn't know any of them. And they were all the writers, you know, and associate producers and stuff. And then at the end of the room were two desks facing each other, like, you know, like Billy Joel and Elton John's pianos and that. And at one desk is this gentleman, kind of balding with great curly hair, who I didn't know who he was. And then at the other desk, of course, is Jerry Seinfeld. And Jerry just gives me the old, "Hi, how you doing?" And rather than break character, I remember taking a workshop once with Sherry North, who coincidentally, by the way, later was Babs Kramer's mom.
Yes.
Sherry North had told me, "You're a character actor. So go in character. Don't break character to say hello or whatever, because they don't have the imagination to go back to what your character is supposed to be. And I knew that this was a pretty extreme character. So I literally just looked at Jerry and went, ah, you know, and then Mark said, okay, so, you know, we're going to read just like you did with Brian, and I'll read with you. And basically we just launched into it. Same first 3 scenes. And I got a really strange memory. Some friends think I'm slightly on the spectrum of autism because I just give me a phone number and I just remember it. So it's that way with dialogue. Like I remember dialogue years later. So these 3 scenes were very familiar to me, you know, even though I hadn't looked at them, you know, since the end.
In weeks, yeah.
Yeah. But I remembered every word, and I was coasting, and Jerry was laughing his fool head off. I gotta say, in all my auditions since then, you know, and I probably had 60 TV auditions since then, I've never heard somebody laugh like Jerry was cackling away. And you know his voice, So there's this high-pitched laughter going on. I mean, I almost felt like looking at him and going, do you mind? I'm trying to work here. So I get the end of the 3 scenes and I realize, oh my God, there's more, right? That I hadn't looked at all. So now I'm going ice cold, you know, right? And luckily my vision, you know, I didn't need reading glasses in those days. I'm going ice cold off the page with words I'd never seen before for the next 3 scenes. But you know, it was going so well and Jerry was laughing so hard, I didn't want to stop and, you know, say, may I go outside and look at this or whatever. I just kept going. And so I read the next 3 scenes ice cold, and they were in order, just like they are on the TV show. And he just kept laughing. And at the end of it all, I kind of shrug and I start to leave, and, you know, they say, thanks for coming in. And then Mark, because they always say that, thanks for coming in, which cracks me up because, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you're welcome. I'm doing you a favor, because it's not like I would crawl naked over broken glass for an acting job, you know? So you're welcome, you know? But they said, thanks for coming in or whatever. And then Mark goes, don't leave. And so I go outside and I sit in a chair. Then Mr. Libertini goes in there and I hear laughter. So I know he's doing pretty good. And then he comes out, but he just leaves. And I'm still sitting there.
Wow.
And so Mark comes out, he goes, come on back in. And I go back in, and Jerry looks at me and he goes, you know, what you did was really funny, man. It was really funny, but I don't understand why you made the character so mean. So could you do it again and, you know, give it a little bit of this, you know, be a little nicer at some spots, you know? And I hate that. I hate when a director tells me to give it variety, because it's a technique. It's not real. It's not basically coming out of your gut.
Right. You created the character already.
Yeah. And that's the way he was. He didn't need variety. You know, that's the way he is. You know, variety is a vocal technique, and this guy doesn't have it, you know? And
yeah. So how did this second
it was
person
terrible.
Well, how did you say no
Crickets.
soup for you? How did you say no
I
no soup?
I couldn't imitate what I did again in a million years. I cannot remember what I was just flying off the seat of my pants, trying to give it variety. It didn't make any sense to me why this guy would be any nicer, you know, because why would I like these people? They're ill-behaved, spoiled brats. He didn't laugh at one thing. I don't think there was a laugh in the whole 6 scenes. And here in my brain, you know, there's this little voice going like, you are dying 1,000 deaths, man.
Yeah.
So I start to leave, you know, tail between my legs, and just couldn't wait to get out of there and just go to work. You know, I was just going to go to court and go to work. And I start to leave, and Mark goes, don't leave. Wait in the hallway. And I go out there and I'm thinking, why? I just died 1,000 deaths. And I know they're, going right to work and they have Richard Libertini. They don't need me. I'm figuring they probably told him to just go ahead and go to Soundstage 9. That's probably why he left. So I sat there for like 20 of the longest minutes of my lifetime, waiting to just have Mark come out and go, okay, go home. And sure enough, about 20 minutes goes by, but Mark says something I'll never forget, which I got an answer to 11 years later. He says, we're having something of a conceptual disagreement in there. So go ahead and go home. And, I don't know what he meant by that, but I was happy to just get out of there. I was sweating bullets and I start to walk away and my pager goes off and it's Mike, the warehouse agent. So I went back to the payphone and I called him. And now I'm figuring he's calling me to say what you said earlier, so how'd it go, But instead he goes, Larry, that's Mike, your agent. You just got hired on Seinfeld, And I went, I think instead of like, what? I think I said, why? It was like, I was so shocked. It was so, the second audition was so bad. And he just goes, yeah, they want you to go to Soundstage 9 at 1 o'clock. So it was now around maybe noon or 12:15. So I called my wife back and I go, I guess we're not going to lunch. Guess what? I just got cast. I'm getting paid $2,610, which is top of show, whatever that means. And I guess the episode is entitled The Soup Nazi.
What was your favorite moment of all those scenes?
Well, of course, it was Julia improvising the drums on the counter, because the look you see on my face, which everybody seems to love so much, that was like my astonishment that she would do that. It wasn't planned or rehearsed. It was just me being in character going like, are you kidding me? And as we got it on its feet and began to rehearse, Andy Ackerman, the director, realized that it was taking me too long to walk to the, to serve the soup, then walk to the cash register to take the money. So someone had the idea to bring someone in from the extra pool to take the money and take the bag away and do all that. And, hence the genius, brilliant Marcia.
Oh, yeah. No, this bit.
Yeah.
It was
She
like a karate move.
extra with no desire to actually be an actress. She loved being an extra. She was a regular in the Monk's Diner scene. So she was a Seinfeld basic regular extra. So that episode ruined her career on Seinfeld. And Jerry actually asked me something like 12 years later when we did the Acura commercial for the Super Bowl. He actually asked me, he goes, oh man, I've always wanted to ask you, who was that girl? I don't remember casting her. And I said, that's because you didn't cast her. She was an extra. And he goes, what? But she was so great. And I said, yeah, I've been talking to people about her for 12 years now. Everyone calls her the Soup Nazi's wife. I didn't get much direction at all, but I got one direction from Andy Ackerman, which I still love to this day, is at the moment where the guy goes, por favor, and I repeat, por favor, he just whispered in my ear, he goes, De Niro. So that's why I'm kind of going like, por favor, And the only other direction that Larry David actually gave me, other than two things he ended up changing after the audience left, was at one point I had picked up while Julia's, I'm doing the armoire thing to her, I would have taken a hatchet and smashed it to pieces. I pick up a towel and I dab my forehead like she's driving me crazy. And Larry David, when we, at the end of every rehearsal day, you do it for Larry instead of the network heads, because by that time it was already known that they were not allowed on set. And unlike every other sitcom that they ruined. So Larry would come and he saw me dab my head with the towel and he goes, yeah, do everything you just did, but don't dab your head with the towel right there. It's a little much. He came up to me, he goes, don't get out of costume. I want to redo two things with you. And I went, oh, thank God, I don't have to leave. And the audience had already left. And he goes, first of all, I want, the Spanish guy, instead of saying unacceptable, I want you to say adios, muchacho. And the actor had been released. So I actually played that scene with Larry David. And, so I got to act with Larry David pretty much before Curb Your Enthusiasm, but you wouldn't, know it because he was off camera. Anyway, and he goes, the other thing I want you to redo is when you yell no soup for you at Julia when she does the Al Pacino thing, he goes, I really like the way you bait George over the bread thing. And I kind of went, okay, I'm not really doing that, but, thank you. And it wasn't intentional. And he goes, I like the way you bait George about over the bread thing. He goes, so when she does the Al Pacino thing, I want you to say, very good, very good. You know what? What? No soup for you. And so Julia comes down and he goes, I want you to redo the Al Pacino thing. And she goes, okay. And so she does it. And then I go, very good, very good. You know what? And she kind of looks at me quizzically and goes, what? Because he didn't tell her what we were going to do. And then I went, no soup for you. Come back 1 year. And she falls on the floor and she's lying there on the floor laughing. And she comes back up and she takes my hand. I think this was my favorite moment. And she goes, you are so funny. And that, that's worth $1 million, And then so we did it again and we got through it. And then it was the saddest thing in the world to have Larry go, okay, we're done. You can go. And it's like, but I don't want to. And he actually, as I was walking away, I think he shook my hand and he goes, good job, man, good job. So people always ask me what he's like. And I always say there's two Larry Davids. There's the social Larry David, who when I met him at the wrap party for season 7, I started to walk towards him to shake his hand. And he's going, it's okay, it's okay. You don't have to. It's okay. I get it. And there's the working Larry David who says like, yeah, do everything you just did. Don't wipe your head right there. That was a little much. And that's it. He's like the mathematician of comedy. Right. Like he takes a minute gesture and says, yeah, don't do that. I call it the easiest job I've ever done because all I had to do was react off these seasoned, professionals who are a well-oiled machine. And yep. It was just the easiest thing I've ever had to do. I remember one day while they were still building the soup kitchen, and I was sitting in the bleachers next to Tom Barry, who was the building superintendent that wouldn't let Elaine move the armoire in, who later, he was Michael Jordan's father on Space Jam, and he was on Cold Case for the whole series. He was sitting next to me and we were watching a Jerry's living room scene. And I just turned to him and I go, is this like paradise or what? And he goes, wouldn't you like to just come to work and do this every day? And I'm going like, in my dreams.